Yeah, also thanks for making the trek down here on a Saturday with all the nice weather. Before I introduce our speaker, I'm just going to fill you in on today's abbreviated agenda. So first 10 minutes or so will be a presentation from Phoebe herself. Next 10 minutes or so will be a Q&A actually, where you can ask Phoebe anything. Is that all right, Phoebe?
Yeah.
That's good. And the last 10 minutes will be the crew neck giveaway. But first things first, I'll introduce Phia Gates. So from founding Climate Cardinals to her various talks around the world, Phia Gates, the co-founder of Phia, works across borders to propagate climate action. Phia Gates is an environmentalist, social entrepreneur, and the youngest UN advisor in US history, but most importantly, she's not here. We have also Phoebe Gates, a social entrepreneur and advocate for sustainable fashion as well as women's reproductive rights. When she's not being featured in major outlets like Vogue and Business Insider, she's wearing chic outfits, picking out new books, and hanging out with her cat. She's fashionable, and today she's fashionably late. Everyone, give a warm welcome for Phoebe Gates. Thank you so much.
I would like to defend myself. I was told to be fashionably late, okay? And I am so honored that you guys are here, particularly on a Saturday, because especially for me in college, there was no way in hell that I would be coming out on a Saturday to a club event. So I am beyond honored that you guys are here, and I have the honor of also being Sophia's co-founder when we started our business together at Stanford. So essentially my job here today is to tell you guys that a passion that you have or something that you're excited about can actually turn into a job. It can turn into a career, and more than that, it can turn into seeing your vision of the world come to life. So before I get into all of that and kind of dive into the history of how we ended up starting Phia and how we got excited about that, oh yeah, perfect. Can we do this? Perfect. A little bit of background on me. So before I started the business, my entire career was really in the women's reproductive health space. So that's what I did my major at Stanford at. It's kind of what I've invested in, funded in. I've done a ton of trips around the world to different clinics and different initiatives in that space, which obviously isn't going as great as it should right now with the current political scene. But for me, the thesis behind reproductive freedom and the reason I invest in this so heavily and care about this is because of this theme of power. And so for me, reproductive freedom is really about who has the power. Who has the power to make decisions about your body, therefore who has the power to make decisions about your financial future, where you get to have an education, where you're having children. And so that idea of power really transcended for me of why I actually wanted to start a business. Because when we think about today who in society has power, it really is a lot of times celebrities, people with money, but also people who are getting to say, hey, I have this crazy idea, and I'm going to create it and see if it's possible. So the VC industry puts $170 billion annually into brand new businesses, into these crazy, audacious ideas to see them come to life, to see if they can get a 10x on that return. Now, 2% of that money is going into female-founded businesses, which means out of $170 billion that are going, being deployed from VC capital year on year, $3 billion is only going into solely female-founded businesses like Phia, where we have 2 female founders. That's crazy. Depressing a little bit, but also as an entrepreneur, whenever you see something depressing, the way you should think of it is, wow, that's a huge effing market opportunity. When you think about 2% of that funding going into female-founded businesses, we're now talking about needs of 50% of the population not being served. So as an entrepreneur, you should always be asking yourself, okay, what is my core thesis about the world, or something I understand about the world that no one else does, that I think I really could build or I could solve this pain point. Now, that's not going to be an overnight, idea that you come up with, but it is going to be, how you're going to actually start your business. And so for me and Sophia, one thing that always really, really bothered us was we had all these big values about power, about female empowerment, about sustainability. But we were in college and we wanted to look hot. And so a lot of times our wardrobes didn't match up with that. We know that fashion today, produces more carbon emissions than the entire aviation industry and shipping combined. Fast fashion per minute produces more CO2 emissions than if you were to drive a car around the world 6 times. So for us, we had kind of these 2 dichotomies of, okay, we believe these things, but this isn't really coming to life. And our generation is spending actually more and more money on fast fashion, even with the rise of secondhand shopping. Now, why is that? It's because our generation is more cost conscious than any generation. We're faced with inflation, we're faced with, we're uncertain about the future. And so for us, our idea was, what if there was a way to create some sort of tool that could actually help you shop in line with your morals and in line with your wallet? So we created an intelligent AI shopping assistant where as you're shopping, it can say to you, hey, this actually is a better investment piece because, instead of buying 5 pairs of shoes every single year, you're gonna have to buy a different pair. If it's fast fashion, it's not durable. We can actually say, hey, this is worth the splurge and you should invest, a bunch more money into buying 1 pair of shoes. And this is what it looks like on a cost per wear basis. You're actually going to get more bang for your buck. And on the flip side, if that item doesn't hold its value, what Phia is gonna do is it's gonna direct you to go buy secondhand alternatives. So we've worked for now a 1.5 years on this, our unique AI algorithm in-house. We work with like Depop, RealReal, Poshmark, all these different secondhand sites, so that if the item actually isn't worth the investment or it's not gonna hold over 60% of its value on the resale market, which oftentimes items don't, we're gonna direct you to our site to find you, that exact item or a similar one from one of these secondhand platforms so that you can buy it, you can filter through it. Because another big thesis we have is we saw this ourselves on campus, and investors would tell us, no, I don't really see that happening. We would say, no, this really is happening. And now we know, we have the data, that resale is growing 9x regular retail year on year. Because our generation is into resale. We know it matches with our wallets, and we know it matches with our morals. And so for us, we had kind of this unique idea of, okay, this is how we shop, this is what we want to have created, and now we're gonna go and build it. And that's why raising funding was really, really important for us, because we wanted to, be able to bring on the dream team of people to create this for the next 5 years. When I think about our company today, I think of the idea we're creating now. We're still in a beta phase, we're building out our app, we have lots of bugs, it's really fun. But I also think of the company 6 months from now, when we're gonna start to tackle selling, when we can actually have an automated digital closet for you based on all your purchases to unlock, the resale value of your closet in real time and make it easy for you to instantly resell your items. I think about, oh my gosh, once we have that closet, what can we do for personalized shopping? These are my theses about the world that I see, because selfishly, these are the things I want as a consumer. And when I think about who's getting funding, I can say, no, there is this gap in the market because other people are not getting to build these ideas, because the money that is coming out of venture capital is not typically going into founders like me or consumers like me who are talking to other young women who are hearing these pain points. And so I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this today, but I think the most important thing, and why I also want to extend the Q&A for this, is my journey is one of many. You guys are going to hear, if you end up going to start a business, or if you go into venture capital, if you go into any career, you're going to hear about tons of people who start successful businesses, who do things, and everyone's going to have their own path. I think kind of the unique thing about today is I'm still in it. We're still in beta, we haven't fully launched, and so it's exciting for me to be able to be in front of you guys and for you guys to be able to ask real questions of, okay, what's this like? How do you go get your first investor? And so I would love to pass it over to Q&A to dive in there and get your guys' thoughts.
Thanks, Steve.
Of course.
We'll have a microphone that goes around, actually. Before you ask your question, definitely introduce yourself. Testing. Yeah, please introduce yourself, your major, what you studied. Yeah. Okay. Let's ask the first question. Sure.
Hi there, I'm Sada. I'm a grad student here at Pangaia, and I also have a startup and I'll be on that team as the best. And I love secondhand, so I cannot always shop. My question is, I saw you're building live and you have a Substack, which I'm signed up for. I would love to hear you talk more about that journey, when you made that decision, and how others can follow their building live in Substack.
Yeah, totally. I think a lot of it is about putting your ego to the side. When I first started the business, I had, we had ideas for Phia that were crazy. Our first ideas, frankly, were awful for what we wanted to start when I look back. We just weren't able to build them. And I think it is really about putting your ego to the side and saying, okay, I'm just gonna build in public and I'm gonna make mistakes. And that's not an overnight thing for me at all. That's something that took months of building that up. And so, like, for example, I would love to read, your blogs about writing, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is where I made a mistake in my startup, and that's what I'm really excited about this Substack, because we can start to open up about, oh goodness, these are hiring mistakes, we made it first, we brought in recruiters too early when we should have left personal networks. And so I think it is really about, I think we're seeing this shift in founders starting to open source their journeys with the Beehive founder, with different podcasts, with TikTok. And so I'm really pumped about that, and that's a huge thing I would definitely lean into as well. But it is something where you do have to put your ego aside and say, hey, you know what, I'm just gonna do this.
Great, who's next?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Hans, junior at GS, major in sustainable development. And my question is, what would be your criteria for choosing investors, or would you try to pitch to institutional investors for your angel investment?
Yeah, it really depends kind of what you're building. So for us, we're building, the way I really wanted to position Phia was as a tech platform when we talk to investors and not as a fashion platform. And the reason for that is when you look at the multiples on, fashion companies getting acquired or going public are actually not as high as obviously tech companies. And so for us, it was really important for me to have an institutional investor. We knew, okay, these are the tier ones of tech investings that have invested in, like Google's or, very successful early stage startups. And I think being at Stanford, you get a whiff of okay, these are the really big funds. These are the ones we want to take money from. And so for us, what we did is it was really important for us to find one institutional lead who could lead our round, and then to go from there and leverage angels that we could actually not necessarily were the biggest people, but people we could actually get real-time advice from. And so that's the biggest thing I'd say is, if you're looking to do a tech company, I would get really one core anchor fund, and then I would go look for angels or other people who can put in a little bit. The one thing I will say as a caveat to that is the people who put in a little bit of money, your angels, those are the people who are really going to hustle for you. Those are the people you're going to be calling at midnight. Your big institutional investors, while they're going to put that name on your company and they're going to help you get great engineering talent, they're not going to be the people you call at 3 a.m. when you have to let someone go and it's your first time and you're freaking out. Those are going to be your angel investors and your advisors you bring on.
Thank you.
Well, you're very far away.
I know.
Maybe you raise your hand first.
I will make this the easiest process for you.
Hi, I'm Lily at Barnard studying math, econ, and computer science. So I wanted to ask a little bit on the tech side. You mentioned engineers, and I'm always curious when it comes to something using a little bit of AI, what that looks like. Of course, you can code it from scratch, or you can use a wrapper on GPT. Would love to hear you walk through that process. That's one of the initial things I would think if you're building a tech platform. What were those like for you, and what was the end goal there, and how did that influence your decision?
Totally, I love this question because this is actually a huge mistake we made early on. Is we wanted to build everything in-house. We wanted our search engine to be built in-house. We wanted to host all of the data. We wanted to clean the data ourselves. And it was a big learning for us to say no, until we can sniff product market fit where, hey, this thing is really working, we should actually outsource everything we can. So if you can build your product with the ChatGPT wraparound and then, oh, it's taking off, boom, then build it in-house, great. And that was a big kind of switch up we had to do where now we're starting to see, early semblance of product market fits. We're building some things in-house, but really leveraging these outsourced tools as much as you can from the get-go, you should 100% be doing. I remember when we first started, we were trying to build, we literally wanted to send out emails. We were trying to build something like MailChimp to design our own emails. I don't know why we spent, a month doing that. We should have just paid for the service to do it. You should always be doing as much as you can outsource until you smell PMF. But another thing I think that's really important is the only caveat to that is data is really important. So as much of your consumer data as you can get, that's really, really critical. And that's why I'm very excited about Phia as a browser extension because, we're in your browser so we can serve you on the shopping page. And we can, be like, oh, well, this is your shopping history. Clearly you really want a pair of red boots. So then we can, make sure when you, later if you come visit the Phia homepage, that we're making sure we're finding you cost-effective, great, sustainable pairs of red boots because we know you've been searching for that. We don't need to build that out today, but as long as we're storing and containing our consumer data so we can serve you the best, that's all that matters. That's what you need to keep in-house and not outsource to anyone else. Everything else, any sort of outsourcing you can do, I would highly recommend.
Also, there are many entrepreneurs in the audience, but for those who aren't in that niche, I guess, could you define what PMF means?
Yeah, totally. So PMF is kind of this funky term because there's no like exact definition of like what it looks like for every single business. But it's this idea of product market fit. You have a market and you're building something, and then all of a sudden you realize, okay, the solution that you created is a fit for that market. So like, you know, you could think of Depop, which is obviously like a secondhand marketplace we all love and use. Like Clue, they have product market fit. The market is secondhand shopping. People love Depop, they have product market fit. Uber has product market fit. So product market fit is this idea of you create a product, you see if it works, consumers might hate it, then you don't have product market fit, but as soon as you sense that really, really strong upward growth, I mean, if you have product market fit, it feels like lightning in a bottle where you don't even have to sell your product.
So yeah, Yara's coming around to give the microphone. After the next question, we're just going to do 2 or so questions from core that have been asked anonymously. And then we'll get back to the rest of the team.
Hi, my name is Rosie. I'm from Pangaia first year. I just had a question about how like we should transition from studying reproductive rights to going into a tech company. Like you didn't specifically major in comp sci, but how did you get yourself involved with building a website and your journey about it?
Totally. I think for me, like I had some very rudimentary like front-end coding skills, but it really was like, a lot of people are like, I want to start a business and then go and find a co-founder. For me, it was kind of flipped where I didn't know I wanted to start a business. Sophia didn't know she wanted to start a business. And we were kind of randomly paired roommates where we had this situation where we were supposed to work with another girl, ended up getting messed up. And there were constantly these late nights where we were like, well, what if we could create this? What if we could do this? And it became all this, almost like this mystery investigation, where we'd like look into this thing and we'd be like, oh, well that company's building it, but we could do this better, we could create this better. And it became like this fun, like obsessive game. And then for me, it just kind of flipped where it's like, well, what if someone gave us money where we could work together as best friends full time to build our idea? Like, how great would that be? And she was like, oh, no, that'd be great, but we don't know if that ever happened. And then we were like, what if we just put all of our effort into making it happen? And it did. And so I think that flip for me was like, I really loved the work I was doing in reproductive freedom. I will continue to do that. The nice thing about the work I do there is I'm able to like work with partners, or I'm able to do like funding or like invest in different solutions. But I'm not the person who's like boots on the ground. So this for me became like my full-time thing.
Sweet. Okay, a few of the core questions from our club. We asked people to submit these anonymously, so they're less polite than what everyone has asked so
No
far.
worries at all.
Okay, so the first one, how are you different from Duke.com, if you're familiar, and why did it take, quote, 2 years plus millions more to build what you're building?
Totally. So Duke.com actually raised double what we raised first off. Second off, I love Duke.com and I love actually learning from other competitors. So what we learned from Duke.com is that there was this like dire need for, okay, I want this item, but I want to find it cheaper. Now, if we think about kind of our moral compass of like, well, we actually want to help the consumer not just get like frankly, a crappy dupe that's gonna, be a one-time wear. Why settle for a dupe when you can find the exact same item, for less? And so that was really our core thesis. I think one of the biggest learnings from Dupe is they invented this URL hack where you could type dupe.com and then boom, it would pull dupes. So we actually did that and we built that within 4 days. We stayed up and we were like, this is a great idea. We should build something like this. And I think that's actually one of the biggest learnings as a founder. You don't always need to come up with the hacks or the virality trends. You should look at other people in your space and be like, well, they're doing that really well. Oh, they made that video better. How can we learn from that company and adapt to that and then apply our own thesis? Because Phia's thesis is get the exact same item for less, don't get a dupe, or we'll tell you if it's worth a splurge because it's better on a cost per wear basis. So we have a very different thesis from them. That doesn't mean we can't learn from other companies. In terms of millions of dollars it took to make this, to be honest, we raised a big round. We really haven't spent it. I think the most expensive thing for a company, so Dupe actually used to be a browser extension, and then that failed after 4 years and they pivoted into doing this site. And so we learned so much from them, and we actually know the founder super well. He's incredible. For us, I think the most expensive thing when you're starting a business is frankly not even what you spend that money on, but having the money raised so that when you're going and acquiring tech talent that has an amazing job from something like Google or Apple, where they're getting a big salary, they have to work less than they work at a startup, and they're scared of, hey, what if I come onto a startup and it's gonna fail? You wanna have that money in the bank so you can say, hey, we have runway, it's okay, we're gonna do this, and we have time to build this. Yes, come on, take a pay cut, and you're gonna need to work harder, but if you believe in this mission, come on board. I think that's the biggest kind of unlock with runway, is that kind of trust and confidence for people.
Gotcha. Awesome. Perfect answer there. The next one, why does Phia have to be a startup? Why are you working?
Totally. Why does Phia have to be a startup? I don't really know how else we could do it. Why am I working? That's a question I think about a lot. I think for me, if I'm being very transparent and honest, wanting to prove myself, wanting to prove that I can build something and create something that consumers love. And I think with my mind, I have severe ADHD. I think I'd be incredibly bored if I didn't work towards something that I care about.
Awesome. Cool. All right. We'll have some more, but for now, we're at 4 questions. And can we, pass them closer to that side of the audience? Well, these two have been waiting for a while.
Hello. Hi, I'm Kathy. I'm a CS junior visiting from Princeton. Thanks so much for coming. My question is, let's say as an investor, you're pitching this idea to me. What makes Phia different? I mean, we talked about DuPont, what is stopping, let's say, honey or machine from just creating this themselves in-house? What is your moat?
Totally, that's a great question. So Honey actually was a huge inspiration for the business. And when we talk about like our angel investors, the people I call crying at 3 a.m., most of those people are from Honey. Honey now has been acquired. They had a great acquisition for $4 billion. So the business has really like slowed down. Now really focuses on this idea of coupons. How can I get the item I'm currently looking at and then get a coupon for it? That's a pain point they solve. Is like instead of having to go all over the internet to find a coupon, we'll just give it to you instantly. I'd say that Phia's difference is that we're right there to find you the item, secondhand, or to say that it's worth the investment. I'd say our mode is that we solve a completely different pain point. Does that stop someone else from creating it? Absolutely not. And if they do, that's actually great proof that we have PMF, because if we're doing something so well that someone else goes and creates it, that's awesome. By the time that they create it, we will be so much further ahead, because the other thing that we're building, the reason I really wanted to do a browser extension is because if you're in the browser, there's so much you can do for the consumer, because they don't have to come back to your app every single week. You're right there on the P2P page, and you can actually edit the P2P page to do like a call to action to say, hey, here's, activate insights. You can literally click on us and we'll come up with a graph of exactly how that item holds its value on the resale market or map you to other items. The reason I'm really excited about being in the browser is because the second thing we're going to build is where we can track your purchases to create that digital closet for you, so you can see in real time, okay, this is what my closet's worth, and when you're ready to resell it, we have really deep, incredible partnerships with companies like Poshmark, like Depop, where you can, with one click, cross-list it on all those platforms. In terms of a company like Shein, we don't work with Shein, but we actually do work with first-hand merchants, mostly luxury houses that are sustainable. Because if we can say to you, hey, this item is actually worth it, here's how it does on a cost per wear basis, and it holds its value over time, if we can make you feel confident about that purchase, we're actually really benefiting that merchant. And so we have relationships with all of them. So not a Shein doesn't apply, because our algorithm would just be like, hey, go buy it secondhand. But for first-hand merchants that are sustainable or are better on a cost per wear basis, we're actually able to partner with them. So they're like, oh, Phia is like a bonus for me. Of course.
Hello, my name is Taylor Graham, and I'm a sophomore at Columbia College studying Foreign Media Studies and Poli-Sci. I'm going to present for Columbia Daily Spectator, our student publication, and I was wondering, you mentioned your angel investors being able to call them at 3 a.m. in the morning. And I was wondering, how do you go about building that team of people that are going to support your mission and actually genuinely have an interest in wanting to have?
Ruthless, shameless, egoless, cold LinkedIn outreach. I will not lie to you. I have probably, people have blocked me on LinkedIn. I've had people email me back saying, please do not email me. Are you Bill Gates' daughter? Stop bothering me over email. Go do something fun. Get off your, I've literally had people block me on email. I guarantee you that I thought people were going to email me back with a restraining order. If I think that someone's cool on LinkedIn, I will send a cold outreach message, especially if you guys are going to schools like Barnard, Columbia, Princeton. That's your foot in the door. Your first line is, I'm a Columbia student. I'm working with a team here at Columbia to build X. I'm very interested, I am a huge fan of your work at law. I would love to connect. Do you have 15 minutes of your time to connect with me? Always lead with some sort of compliment, something you really like about their work. I specifically targeted people, especially like one woman who's an incredible advisor to us. Her name's Joanne. She was the president of Honey. So she's like, was the one who did that big sale for them. So looking at people like the COO, the CMO, the chief investment officer of these different companies, if you tell them you're a huge fan of their work, oftentimes they're doing 50 cold outreach messages and asking for 15 minutes of their time with a good hook and a compliment that's customized to them. At least one fish is gonna bite. And so you can get on the phone with them and talk to them. A lot of these people who've had big exits or something like that, they want to actually mentor and help other entrepreneurs. They want to feel like, hey, how can I help you? How can I benefit your life? So I think that's been like one of the biggest learnings for me is shameless LinkedIn outreach. You've got to get your email credits and use them very, very wisely.
Hi, my name is Mary. I'm doing my master's in mechanical engineering, and I know you mentioned a lot about outsourcing and just leveraging that as much as you can. So what do you and Sophia do on the day-to-day in terms of strategizing? What is your main stuff?
Totally. It honestly really depends on the day. I feel like as a founder, there's always just fires you need to put out. But really in these kind of early stages, a lot of what we do is product. So designing the product, literally being in the Figma, building it, talking to consumers. I'll get on the phone with almost anyone who uses my product, especially people who I think, especially if someone emails me a complaint about my product, I immediately want to get on the phone with them because they're who you can learn the most from. If we're not doing coding, we'll build out analytics charts so we can track how the product's doing day on day, coming up with reports on that, and then saying, okay, we have this data, we have this design, okay, now we need to make a product decision about where are we messing up, what are we doing here. So I think one of the biggest things we had is like this summer, one of the original things we pushed was a browser extension where it would only pop up and show you secondhand alternatives. And when we talked to a bunch of users, we watched these user sessions, we built a tool so we could watch, how are people interacting with us. And we started to learn, hey, people are kind of duping us. They're looking at the secondhand alternatives and they're saying, wow, this piece actually holds its value, so I should go ahead and buy it firsthand. And so then we're like, okay, well, what do we do about this? We've now heard from 7 different women that are using our product to do this. Do we prioritize this? Do we think about a pivot towards, a value investment piece? Okay, how do we prioritize this? We just had 12 other bugs reported yesterday. Do we get the edge team on those? Do we try to fix them ourselves? What's top priority here? Because you're always going to have fires. So it's really about managing people and figuring out which fire to put out first, and then company direction. But my goodness, the days are so busy. If you think about customer service, the email management, to product decisions, to managing people, there's a lot of different things you end up doing. And I think honestly for me, like the hardest one is people management. Is figuring out, okay, how do you structure someone's, time most effectively? How do you give them good work-life balance when you feel like there's 100 million things to do? How do you deal with, this person's gonna be better at a task, but how do you protect, person B's ego because you want them to stay motivated? That kind of stuff, as things progress, becomes more and more of your life as a founder. And for me, I find that to be the hardest thing. I'd way rather sit there and do our analytics and do our bugs all day. That for me is a lot more enjoyable and easier, but it does become a huge part of like what you have to do as a founder. And just keeping your team motivated too. Making them want to stay up till 3 a.m. and work with you and stay in the office. Because for you, it's like your baby, but you need to keep those people there late. Even when, for them, they're getting, they're taking a pay cut, you need to have them believe in this dream. And keeping that up is a huge, huge time suck. But yeah, I'd say there's a million things you end up doing, from analytics to customer service to every single thing. But I'd say team motivation, team management for me personally is the hardest thing I have to do, and it's been the biggest skill I've had to learn in. So for me, is probably the most intensive.
Awesome, thank you.
Sweet, we have time for only a few more, and they have to be really quick. So if you could also rapid fire answer a few questions.
Perfect. I'm sorry, I'm a long talker.
No, you're fine. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. I'll take it quick. I'm in engineering school. It seems like you have a lot of different directions that you can take this in from here. Where are you focusing that energy, and how are you deciding?
Yeah, honestly, a big thing for us is using, so we brought on Nikita Beyer, who's like a big Twitter guy on product. He's been really helpful for us in making really prioritized product decisions. Another thing we'll do is we'll like constantly be doing customer interviews, and then we'll rank by, okay, how many customers have given us this piece of feedback, and then what's the actual like tangible effect on the business. So like the top piece of requested feedback we have is people want to be able to save items and make collections. That for us is great. We can definitely add that feature. Do we want to spend 3 weeks, building out the architecture to do that? No. Like that's not going to make a huge tangible difference on the business versus building out another feature like automated selling, does have a huge business impact. Well, half the amount of consumers have requested that, we have this thesis around it, so we're going to prioritize that. But I think having one advisor, one angel investor who's an expert in product has been a huge help. And then structuring both how many customers give you that piece of feedback towards what's the actual, ROI impact on the business.
Awesome. Okay, super quick.
Hey, Phoebe, my name is Summer. I'm a junior right now and majoring financial econ and computer science. So I would like to ask you some questions about the sustainable clothes. Sometimes the concept of sustainable clothes sometimes means one-time wearing, for example, the clothes like reclamation protected. So I would like to ask you, what's your idea behind this concept, and do you want to do something later in the next chapter of the sustainable clothes? Thank you.
Absolutely. That's Sustainable Pulse, the newsletter, or Sustainable Post?
Sustainable clothes.
Oh, Sustainable
For example,
Clothes.
the reclamation, like their production of one-time wearing, I come and wash it. And I definitely want to know what you want to do like later in your career in this this sector.
Absolutely. I think there's a ton of great sustainable fashion brands that are emerging, which is great. For me, that's not as interesting as how can we actually give consumers tools to be more sustainable themselves. So the next thing I'm really pumped about is this idea of if we're in the browser, okay, first we can tell you what's a smart buying decision based on cost per wear versus okay, just get it secondhand. We know that buying secondhand is an 80% carbon reduction, which is great. The second thing I'd love to do is once we digitize the closet, saying to people, hey, here's a structured outfit based on the weather today. You've only, here's your cost per wear of this item. So you're actually motivating people to use their entire closet. I think another thing I really want to do when we think about marketing or influencing is I really want to normalize this idea of wearing clothes multiple times. I think it's very stupid that we don't do that. If you have something hot, you should wear it as many times as you can if you look good in it. So I think that there's a huge campaign opportunity around that to shift the culture there as well that I'm pumped about from the marketing end. And also, I'm good on time as well, so it's totally up to you guys.
Are you guys up for this? Maybe 5
I've been here
minutes.
for half an hour.
Great. Well, let's try to keep it quick. The career and giveaway soon. Maybe 10-word questions, no introductions, 5-word answers. Let's try.
Okay, so real quick, I'm Krisha, I'm studying neuroscience. What's the most unexpected insight you gained about consumer behavior through data collected by Phia?
This might be a little controversial, but I think that you have to think, if you're thinking as a consumer, you have to think as lizard brain as possible. If I think that a button is clear to a consumer, it's not clear. It needs to be bigger, it needs to be greener, it needs to be bolder. If you want the consumer to click there, you need to make it as obvious as possible. So zooming out for me, I will literally go out and find a random person who's never seen our product and ask them, does this make sense? It needs to make sense in the first 3 seconds. So thinking as lizard brain as possible has been my huge unlock for consumer stuff, but honestly, probably my biggest shocker.
Sweet, lizard brain. Who's next? Very concise.
Hi, I'm building a consumer social platform. You mentioned you have Nikita Beer sort of in-house. I wondered if you could share any tips or advice you have about organic growth and sort of viral loops.
Yeah, totally. I think building some sort of hack that's super easy for the consumer, I would look at other people in your space and what they've done. Obviously, if you're building like a social app, the onboarding flow is going to be huge. So you're probably going to want to do authentication via phone number so they can instantly add their contacts and have some sort of incentive for them to add their contacts. Because that's a classic viral loop in social apps. That's a big thing that he's really focused on, especially in his onboarding flows. I'd also look at his 2 apps that he sold. What are they called? I'll send them to you later. But his 2 apps have done really, really well in terms of their onboarding flow and how they get to the top of the app store to optimize that funnel, because that's where consumers live and die, is in your onboarding funnel.
Sweet. Next one. All brethren are, very concise, please.
Hi, I'm curious, why did you decide to call it Phia?
Stupidest reason ever. Phoebe and Sophia together. We had a bunch of big ideas, the trademark wasn't available, and Phia, the .com is also available. So we're 4-letter word with the .com name available. Perfect.
Sweet.
Okay, I can just stop. My question is, obviously you and Sophia are really good friends. You guys know each other since college. How have you handled any co-founder disputes that have come up? And what do you think about working with your best friend? Like, if you went back
Oh my gosh, it's super hard, but the nice thing is that we fight all the time. But it's always like, okay, we have a rule where it's like, okay, after like 10 minutes of arguing, we're gonna pick one of our two solutions and we're gonna try it and we're gonna agree to disagree, but we're gonna disagree and commit. And then, you know, if my idea works out, okay, great, we keep going with it. If it fails, great, then we try her idea. As long as we're moving quickly and, you know, trying the other person's idea very, very fast, I think that's been one of the biggest things. The hardest thing is especially on hiring. If you disagree about a new hire, I think our thing has been like, okay, let's, you know, if we really fundamentally disagree here, let's bring this person on in a trial and go from there. But the 10-minute rule of argument to disagree and commit has been a big one for us.
So disagree with it. First round. You already asked the question, but yeah, shoot.
Hi, I'm Alexandra. At what point in Phia did you approach investors, and what did you present to investors to get market?
Totally. So we actually started pitching investors long before we had anything, which I like kind of regret because our first investor pitch is like, I will never speak to those people again. If I see them again, I literally cry and be so embarrassed. I don't know what I said to them. But the first, you know, time we actually like properly went out to raise from investors was once we built an MVP, so it was a browser extension that would show you secondhand alternatives. We had a really crappy version of it. I mean, if you're looking at the bag, it would often show you boots. It would load for 15 seconds. But we had initial stats of, oh my gosh, consumers are actually buying things on this thing, and we could actually give them the tangible, super buggy product. So as soon as we had that, and we had early stats, wow, people are actually sharing this, even though it's awful, with their friends, they're actually buying stuff on it. Clearly there's something here if this is the version that we're able to build, and it's this bad, people are still using it. So I'd say once you have some sort of MVP and good signal from consumers that there's something there, that if that product was, you know, beautiful, then it actually, you know, could take off.
Sweet. For the next questions, we do need to use the microphone because this is being recorded. So yeah, who's next? Sure.
Hi. Yes. So have you heard of Benny? Yeah. So Benny's also a Chrome extension that helps you find secondhand resale options, and we also have like the same shopping hack as like Duke.com, so you can go check Benny's.com and it'll show you like secondhand options. So I guess my question is, what differentiates Phia from Benny?
Totally. So ours, first of all, I think it's really exciting to see different things take off in this space. And one thing I really advise you is like, you want to like watch your competitors and actually like get to know them, because if this space is moving fast, that's beneficial for everyone. Like they should be successful, we should be successful. And so the biggest differentiator is Benny is taking you directly just to secondhand alternatives versus Phia is more like a shopping assistant where we're actually going to show you insights on first-hand purchase versus the secondhand purchase and graph for you, you know, the value of this item over time, as well as like the digital closet. Versus Benny's just secondhand alternatives that they direct you instantly to. They also work with, right now they pull from only 20 different marketplaces versus Phia is pulling from now 350, so that's been a big thing for us.
I've also heard of Croissant.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Croissant is really interesting. For context, they're a tool that does guarantee buybacks at checkout, so they can say, hey, if this is, you know, $200 item, we'll guarantee we'll buy it back from you for $40. The interesting thing about Croissant is the amount they say that they're able to buy it back from you is super low because they need to arbitrage it, right? Their whole business dies and lives in the fact that they can buy back for that item from you and they can make a margin when they go ahead and resell it. So a bunch of these B2B partners that are integrating Croissant were like, we hate this thing because it's showing that the buyback value is so low of our items, we won't put this on our site. And so originally we would put, you know, we'd make screens before we built anything, we'd make mocks of like what if Phia looked like Benny, what if Phia looked like Croissant. We get all these feedback from consumers and people. Now with our B2B play, we're actually able to show you a much higher value. We're able to say this is a $200 item, the resale value is $120 because we don't need to make an arbitrage off of you. We just want to give you the data, and we're really a data first tool versus like a buyback loan tool, which actually for like a B2B play, a lot of merchants really prefer, which is super interesting.
Thank you.
Awesome. Brian, Roosevelt.
Hi. Given that your background wasn't initially in tech, was it hard to break into the tech industry and talk to investors initially?
No, I would say honestly, like being, I mean, there's so much, like I do, you know, front end code, like I wasn't going to be your AI genius, but as long as you have the right people on your team, that's really all that matters. I think there were some questions about having two non-technical or non-deeply technical co-founders, but bringing on, we brought on before we raised like a great, engineering team, and that for us was a huge unlock.
So did you have your team before you started talking to investors?
Again, we talked to investors when we were really bad at it before, and then as soon as we had the MVP, we had like 2 girls on the team who were both engineers, and then we went out and raised, which was a huge unlock for us. So to say, hey, we can do the front end of this, but this girl's, hey, a good search expert, we have this person on this side. As long as you can say to an investor, hey, this is the areas I don't have, and this is how I'm gonna go get it, is the most important thing. Same thing with if you have like a deeply, technical founder who didn't know how to do marketing, they could say, hey, well, I have this person on for marketing. And for us, like when investors were really talking to us, it's like, well, what's your advantage over these other companies? And our advantage is really our distribution. So like at the point of launch, like we're doing a big podcast, but like we have all these other distribution opportunities that are really big, and that was a big unlock for investors.
My name is Todd, and I'm doing space science. So my question is that, how do you make the best out of college? And what steps you took in college helped you the most to the current year?
I used to laugh at people when they said this. They're like, oh, well, your classes don't matter that much. It's really about the connections you make. And now looking back, I 100% agree. I studied human biology. I learned so much. I studied my ass off. And a lot of the facts or stats that I remember to get an A on a test, like, I don't apply to my day-to-day living. But that girl I sat next to, who I thought was a genius, who I'd work until late night on a Saturday on a PSET with, I call her when I'm like, is this a stupid decision or it's not a stupid decision? Like, how do you think about this? How do you shop as a consumer? It's those connections, and it's not necessarily investors or advisors you meet in college, but it's your friends who are also geniuses that you can call up and be like, okay, take a look at this thing, tell me what you think. Can you sit here and ideate with me on a tagline for this long? It's those people who become like a core part of your community that are like incredible.
Awesome. Two very consistent.
Hi, my name is Lacey. I'm a grad student in public health, and my undergrad was in film. So I'm really curious about your marketing tactics, especially with our generation. Like, I think a lot of marketing for social media trends are what pushes this like ideology, like quantity over quality, and like all these hauls, machine hauls. So I'm just wondering what your tactics are kind of going against these trends.
Yeah, totally. So I'm really excited about this. We have some stuff that like I can't announce yet, but will come out when we're doing like launch in February with like the app, which really comes about. But we're going to be doing kind of like a podcast series as well with some different creators that we partner with. I think the biggest thing for us is like attaching ourselves to like a big creator name or someone that we knew had really intentful content, but that primarily had like a very dedicated community that like would fight for this person. Because I think there's so much content out there. It's about finding what creators actually have like a community that will live, die, and breathe for them.
Awesome. Last one, all the way up there. Yeah, you've been raising your hand for time. Could you guys actually pass this up? And Yura, could you bring the crew next up, actually?
Hi. I just want to ask, like, how did you start off with Phia? Like, did you build a product, or did you analyze the market, and how would you change it?
Yeah, totally. I actually say, so the first thing we did was we talked to a bunch of consumers. We probably interviewed 90 women about their shopping habits. That I have no regret with. Then we actually dove right into building the MVP where we'd show you those secondhand alternatives. My regret is I wish we kind of started building right away. I actually wish we'd done like smoke screen tests where we built like a fake ad for the product and built like, fake ads and put $20 behind, 5 different versions of the product to see what performed best. I wish we had done some sort of smoke screen fake product test to learn from consumers, because we probably could have learned that people wanted, the graph insights about the resale value, the cost per wear value of an item, without actually building this whole other product and then learning. We probably could have showed them interactive prototype and learned some of that stuff. So I think that would be my biggest learning.
Awesome. One more round of applause for Phoebe. Thanks so much for coming. So Phoebe's team actually offered to give the core board 7 sweatshirts. But to thank you guys for coming on a Saturday, a really cool one at that. We're not going to keep them for ourselves, of course. So raise your hand if you really want one. And let's distribute these.
Perfect. I can't throw very far, so I'm relying on you for this.
Who was here early?
He's your club, so you're sitting down. Sorry.
Michael!
Really close my eyes and Good luck, guys. Who else? I told you guys to sit further.
I can try again. Other things will have a lot more at launch too, so I'll give you guys, if you need to like get another round made, but I'll have more at launch. Thank you. Let's do over here.
The very last one. You guys don't seem like you wanted enough. Now let's make you enough. Oh, you guys were here earlier.
Thank you guys so much. It's like a huge honor, especially to be like the beginning of your journey and like still learning things and stuff. But I'll make sure you guys also have my contact information. So, like if you guys have other questions, you're gonna email me. I know everyone can get to ask something. Like you're more than welcome to email me stuff. I will come back on that. I love doing this. This is really fun. Also, huge favor to ask if you guys could make accounts at Phia.com. That'd be huge. We're rolling out new features every week. We have tons of bugs. If you find them, I'd love to know. If you have ideas, I'd also love to know. You guys are ridiculously smart crowd, so I can't thank you guys enough.
Here's our contact information. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Awesome. And I'll make sure to watch that inbox too in case any like other comments or stuff